This is Ken Martin, the chair of the Democratic National Committee. After he took over in 2025, he ordered a comprehensive review of why the Democrats lost the 2024 election. Here he is on Pod Save America last August, speaking about how important this review is.
We also have to have an accounting for what happened in the last election, which is why we're finishing our after-action review to really dig into this, to give people a sense who invested so much time, energy, and money, what happened and why we lost. So what we're looking at is the campaign, the party, of course. We're looking at the tactics, the spending, the messaging, the timing, all of it, to really holistically look at where we did well and where we fell down on the job.
But many were skeptical, because the month before, the New York Times reported that the Democrats' 2024 autopsy is described as avoiding the likeliest cause of death. Brilliant headline, by the way. The audit, which the committee is calling an after-action review, is expected to avoid the questions of whether former President Joseph R. Biden Jr. should have run for re-election in the first place, whether he should have exited the race earlier than he did, and whether former Vice President Kamala Harris was the right choice to replace him, according to the people briefed on the process so far. Nor is the review expected to revisit key decisions by the Harris campaign, like framing the election as a choice between democracy and fascism, and refraining from hitting back after an ad by Donald J. Trump memorably attacked Ms. Harris on transgender rights by suggesting that she was for they/them and Mr. Trump was for you. Party officials described the draft document as focusing on the 2024 election as a whole, but not on the presidential campaign, which is something like eating at a steakhouse and then reviewing the salad. Again, good one. And Ken Martin kind of hinted that the report was going to leave certain things out. Tiny, insignificant details like the quality of the candidate, the actual campaign, reality.
What I'm not interested in is answering questions that don't help inform future elections.
Right, because figuring out why voters overwhelmingly rejected your top-of-the-ticket strategy definitely wouldn't help inform future elections. But as it turns out, the report itself was destined for the shredder anyway, because by December, Ken Martin decided to scrap the entire report, claiming that releasing it would be counterproductive for the Democrats. In a statement on the matter, Martin wrote, "The review is complete, and we are already putting our learnings into motion. We're winning again, even in places that haven't gone blue in decades. Here's our North Star. Does it help us win? If the answer is no, it's a distraction from the core mission." But this directly contradicts what Ken Martin told Jon Favreau just months prior.
And we have to do it because, when you win elections, you're a genius. You did nothing wrong. And as a result, think about this, in 2020, they didn't do a post-election review. Right. Well, we won.
Yeah.
Everything was great. Right? I mean, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
2024, we have to do this, and we have to look at it very holistically, and that's what we're doing.
And now, 4 months later, Ken Martin's spinning so fast that he's about to take off into orbit.
I said from the very beginning, we did over 300 interviews with folks. It was a very exhaustive review of not just the 2024 election, but the years that preceded it, to make sure that we learn the right lessons so that we could win the next election, right? Engaging in a back and forth and relitigating the 24 election does not help us focus on the 26 and 28 election.
Wait, Ken Martin literally said that it was bullshit not to have an extensive review. Now, simply asking to see the review that he literally promised is just relitigating the past.
What I want folks to focus on is making sure that they learn the lessons that help us win the next election and inform the next election. For instance, it doesn't help to, us to engage in about a lot of what ifs in the 2024 election. None of us have a time machine.
The "I don't have a time machine" defense. Because clearly, reviewing past data to improve future strategy requires time travel. That's just science. And obviously, a DNC chair isn't going to get a lot of pushback on MS now. But what I was not prepared for was a former Obama speechwriter and Democrat loyalist actually standing on business and holding Martin's feet to the fire.
Why did you change your mind on that?
Well, look, I mean, what I said all along, even when I ran for this position, is that we were going to focus on the things that will help us win the upcoming election, right? Making sure that we learn the right lessons that could help inform our victories. And that's what we've done.
Oh, now he thinks he's a Jedi Master. You don't need to see the report.
Why not release the full report? What's in the report that you wouldn't want
Well, first off,
to
there's
publicize?
there's no smoking gun in the report. And I know that's what everyone's so eager to learn. I mean, the smoking gun. Guess what, John?
But if there's no smoking gun, why wouldn't you just release it then?
Because we want to keep the focus on the lessons.
And if there's no smoking gun, then just release the boring 200-page document and prove to everyone that this isn't a massive establishment cover-up.
Instead of navel-gazing and looking backwards and trying to relitigate 2024, I don't know about you, John, but I don't have a time machine. I don't think you do. No one does, so we can't change what happened in 24.
But expecting basic transparency and accountability after a catastrophic electoral wipeout isn't navel-gazing. It's just expecting you to not only do your job, but to keep your promises.
What we need to do is learn the lessons of 24 and the years preceding that can help us win this upcoming election. We've been talking about what those lessons are, and we've actually been putting those lessons into action. We have already started to put those lessons into action, and we're going to continue to put those lessons we've learned.
I think you want to learn lessons, like you said.
Well, listen, to win elections, if they want to win elections, I'm happy to share what we learn in the way of the lessons. Learn the lessons.
Say lessons again. I dare you. I double dare you, motherfucker.
People are obsessed about this in a way that continues to turn them away from wanting to focus on the lessons and instead thinking that there's some sort of smoking gun in here that's going to give them the one single reason that Kamala Harris lost the election, or the one single thing that we should have done differently that's going to actually help us win in the future. What we don't need to be focused on is actually relitigating 2024.
It's amazing how fast "we need an exhausting review" turns into "stop asking questions" the second he's in charge of the party.
People, of course, want to weaponize the report in a way to look backwards, to point fingers, place blame in a way that actually doesn't keep us focused on the upcoming election.
Let me translate that from Washington speak to plain English. Weaponizing the report just means reading it, and pointing fingers means holding the actual people in charge accountable for a billion-dollar disaster. We certainly can't have that.
And I want to be very clear, there's nothing that changed from what I said on the campaign trail to now, which is when
you were on the campaign trail and you talked about definitely releasing an autopsy and criticized the DNC for not releasing an autopsy in 2016, in your mind you thought, I'm going to do one but only release certain lessons and not the full report?
No, what I said at the time is exactly what I've been saying now, which is we have to focus on the things that help us win the future elections. We have to focus on those lessons.
Okay, so what are these lessons that Ken Martin is referring to? Well, here's a couple examples. The DNC playbook points out that many voters have a radar for authenticity. As social media natives, young people have a hypersensitive radar for cringe, untrustworthy content. Even when executed well, being online isn't enough to break through or inspire action. A campaign shouldn't adopt slang or mimic online culture just to relate to young people.
Yo, this is the Ranking Rizzler on appropriations. Democrats are making life smoother through government funding. It's giving, it's giving it.
2 words: term limits. Another lesson is that Democrats need to earn black votes. Don't assume black voters will automatically support Democratic candidates. Organizers noted that the black community increasingly feels taken for granted, reinforcing the need for campaigns to engage black voters intentionally and early. You mean showing up to a black church 2 weeks before Election Day and pandering to a congregation isn't working anymore? It only took them decades for them to figure out that demanding blind loyalty isn't an actual strategy. The playbook also explicitly directs campaigns to prioritize hiring black organizers and value lived experience as a meaningful credential. Too often, campaigns prioritize hiring people of color in junior positions, but don't prioritize diversity in leadership hiring. So the DNC is openly admitting that they've been sticking minorities in low-level junior positions while keeping all the actual leadership and the actual consulting money for the white elite establishment class. The party of diversity, folks. The party of diversity.
People believe there's some sort of magic silver bullet in there that's going to solve all of our ills at the Democratic Party. There's not.
And now he resorts to strawmanning, because it's a lot easier to argue against a fake demand for a magic bullet than it is to explain why you're hiding 200 pages of actual data. He's a Democrat, all right.
And I understand.
I don't think there's going to be a magic silver bullet, though. Who thinks that? No one thinks it's good. No one thinks there's a magic silver bullet. It's a 200-page report. You interviewed people in 50 states. You spent a lot of donor money on it. I think people are probably wondering, like,
we didn't spend a lot of donor money on that, and that's just inaccurate.
You spent a couple $100,000 on it, right?
No, we did not.
It was a free report.
When you can't defend the cover-up, pivot to the accounting. Favreau throws out the free report line as pure sarcasm to point out how ridiculous this argument is, but Ken Martin completely misses the joke because he actually expects you to believe that the report didn't cost a dime. According to reporting by NBC News, Martin appointed Paul Rivera, a longtime operative with no ties to the 2024 campaign or the DNC at the time, and whom Martin has long known and trusted to lead the review. Rivera was not paid, according to a source familiar with the situation, acting as an informal senior advisor to the DNC.
Did you have some sort of record that shows we spent any money on that?
I've seen reporting that you did spend money on it. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, well that's inaccurate.
So Jon Favreau got that hundreds of millions of dollars figure from Norman Solomon, the executive director of the liberal advocacy group Roots Action, who told NBC News, Ken Martin's basically saying, we've learned a lot. We spent hundreds of thousands of dollars at least doing interviews in 50 states, and now we know a lot more about what went wrong and how to fix it. But we're not going to tell the thousands and thousands of Democratic candidates around the country what we found out. And we're not going to tell the millions of people who donated money to the Democratic Party candidates in the last few years what we learned. So to be fair, that hundreds of thousands of dollars figure is an assumption by the leader of a group who is constantly at odds with the DNC. But on the other hand, if that figure is inaccurate, it raises more questions than answers.
The person we asked to do this is an unpaid advisor to the DNC. And so I appreciate where it's coming from, John, but let's just trade in facts on this, right? The reality is we did talk to, hundreds of people. It was an exhaustive exercise to really get at what are those key lessons.
Let's just trade facts on this. The absolute nerve. He's lecturing Favreau about facts while actively suppressing a 200-page factual report from his own party. But more importantly, Ken Martin wants you to believe that there were zero costs associated with conducting over 300 exhaustive interviews across 50 states, even if the lead advisor worked pro bono, travel, hotels, staff time, and resources. It all costs money. The math is definitely not mathing, guys.
What I'm not going to do is release a report that turns everyone backwards, trying to either point fingers or place blame, and actually ignore their own responsibility in helping us to fix the situation.
But it should be noted that Ken Martin was among those that questioned the over-reliance on consultants and what kind of paychecks that they walked away with. NBC News points out that a full accounting has not been made of who was paid what from the $1.5 billion that was spent during 2024, though the DNC disclosed it carried more than $20 million in debt from Harris's loss. So to recap, Ken Martin promised a full public autopsy of why the Democrats lost. He commissioned a 200-page report, and then he buried it, blamed everyone else for navel-gazing, and then tried to gaslight the very people who funded the campaign into believing that asking for the report he explicitly promised them is somehow a distraction. Masterclass in leadership right there.
It was interesting to learn that you do still plan on releasing an executive summary of the full after-action report publicly to people who want it. That is coming soon, I guess.
We've been releasing those. We'll continue to release those.
We've been releasing them. You've been releasing an executive summary, or you've been doing individual lessons? We've been releasing
those lessons. The lessons are the summary. We've been releasing those since the beginning of this year.
The lessons are the summary? He's just redefining words in real time to avoid handing over the actual document. But go ahead and try this tactic out in real life. You know, like when the IRS audits you, just tell them that you're not going to relitigate last year's taxes, and you're not going to hand over any actual receipts, but you'd be happy to share a few vague life lessons about budgeting. Anyway, that's it for now. Head on over to my super cool merch store at don'twalkrun.shop. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. Please subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you next time, if there is next time.